On today's show, we're going one-on-one with the governor of Minnesota. What outdoor questions should we ask? Well, we thought of a few. Tune in and find out. And there's gold in these maple trees. We're going to tag along with a family 3 generations deep who have, you guessed it, been making maple syrup.
A little bit of nutmeg.
Laura Shera is back in the kitchen, this time with a mixture of spices that work magic for either ducks or geese or pheasant. And later, our Minnesota Bound Classic, we tag along with a well-known husband and wife team, Lee and Tiffany. They are TV stars. Do you know where they were raised? You'll find out. Those stories and more next.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's select GMC dealers.
Hi, everybody. Raven and I welcome you to the show. You know, if there is one office in Minnesota where you could hang the sign, "The buck stops here," it would be the office of Governor of Minnesota. Well, that said, we had the chance recently to sit down with Governor Mark Dayton to talk about some outdoor issues. Here's what our conversation was all about. They say it can be lonely at the top for governors and such, but not true for Minnesota's governor, Mark Dayton. That's because he has faithful friends, 2 of them who share the governor's mansion on Summit Avenue in St. Paul.
Yeah. I say when I come home from work and everybody in the world hates me, they wag their tails, you know, and that makes it all worthwhile.
Mark Dayton, Minnesota's 40th governor, is the father of 2 sons, Eric and Andrew, a grandfather, and also a governor seeking a second term. What drives you to run again? What do you like about being governor?
I like the chance to serve. I love the state. I love the chance to go around the state and meet people from all backgrounds and all walks of life. I mean, amazing people that have lived amazing lives and that I would never meet and encounter in any other way. And the great thing about governor is you really can take the initiative and try to make things happen, and that's what's satisfying about my line of work. As governor, you're really part of the fabric of Minnesota life, so it's a very enriching experience, and I'm very grateful to be here. And
we asked the governor if he would sit down and talk about some outdoor issues impacting Minnesota. One of those problems is the severe decline in grasslands in farm country, the shortage of grass buffer strips for wildlife, and declining water quality. We asked him if he thought there was a solution.
We've got 99.9% of farmers that are good stewards of their land, and most of them inherited it or worked hard to acquire it, and they want to pass it on to their children and grandchildren. So, I mean, I think there's a willingness there. You know, we got laws that we don't enforce, and that's a real problem to me. It bothers me when I hear that, and I've not heard that there's no enforcement there, and there should be, again, penalties commensurate with the damage that's caused, and that's how the responsible folks, which are most of us, can have the kind of environment that we want for it passed on to our next generations.
Governor Dayton started the Governor's Pheasant Opener Party. Is the loss of grassland threatening Minnesota's pheasant hunting tradition?
I think it's a very, very good idea, and look for ways in which we can do whatever we possibly can. I mean, I love pheasant hunting, so it's a priceless heritage, and we need to preserve it here in Minnesota and improve it.
Sometime back, the South Dakota governor suggested having a summit to help perhaps solve their declining pheasant population issues. Have you ever considered maybe doing that in Minnesota?
Well, I considered it after reading about his initiative. I think it's an excellent idea.
I asked the governor about his interest in the outdoors and where did it come from.
And my father took my brother and me duck and pheasant hunting down in southwestern Minnesota near Wyndham, so we did that, and we were up in Lake Vermilion. My father and his brothers had a cabin up there, and so 2 weeks a year we would go up there, and I didn't realize till I was about 22 that my father didn't know how to fish, and he didn't let me know that he didn't know how to fish, so I spent a lot of time on Lake Vermilion not catching fish. Speaking
of fish, the walleye population on Mille Lacs, the state's premier walleye fishery, is in a historic decline. Yet the governor and legislative leaders have been largely silent about DNR's management of the lake or the issue of tribal netting.
Well, I've met with the tribal leadership, and they're very intractable on this subject. I think it was a bad Supreme Court decision, 5-4, but that was the Supreme Court's decision, and that's now the law of the land we have to live under. But I say, if your brother or sister were out there 2 weeks before the fishing opener for you, and they're out there, spearing and netting, a whole bunch of fish that aren't going to be there then when you go out, you'd be mad at your sister or brother. So, the racial issues inflames those feelings. But I think the basic problem is the inequality of the fishing and hunting rights, but they are established rights under the Constitution, and I haven't found a way in which we can engage the tribes that we can offer something that they would want that would get them to agree to modify their take.
In a nutshell, your views of your own DNR's operation.
Well, I think Tom Lander's done an outstanding job. It's a tough job. It's one of the most challenging, and there are a whole lot more people in Minnesota who know and care about who's the commissioner of DNR than who's the governor, or just about anything else.
Coming up, spring means maple syrup, and this family takes the tradition very, very seriously. We'll see how sweet it is.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Minnesota Select GMC Dealers, Kinetico, Radco Truck Accessories, and by Starkey Hearing Technologies.
We've all heard about making maple syrup, but did you know it's a very contagious activity? We have found a family that's been tapping maple trees now for 3 generations. Travis Frank has the story.
It's time to celebrate. Spring has arrived and there's gold in the trees.
Sugar time, it's sugar time. Sure feels fine.
Fine indeed. Clark Optimus celebrates spring with music and maple syrup.
That's good.
A school teacher by day and folk singer by night has spent more than 20 years tapping his giant maple trees.
Basically, when we tap on a tree, you look at, this is a fairly young one, so we go 15 inches diameter, you can tap 1 tap. 24 inches, we figure you can put 2 taps in. 36 inches, you put 3. 48, 4.
This year he's teaching a newcomer, his son Mason, which now makes 3 generations in this family business.
We used to do it this way when we started over 20 years ago by hand. Mason, you want to try it? You tap it, you drill it in 3 inches, 2-degree angle, it'll run by gravity, and then of course you put the tap in. See, this is the tail end of the run, but this one's really kicking in. And then we'd run it to a 5-gallon bucket.
Warm days draw sap up the tree.
It's bringing the sugar from the ground up to the leaves and to get nourishment.
Frost pushes it back down. 1 drip at a time, buckets fill.
Then the sap fills up, of course, sometimes 5 gallons, 10 gallons a day, depending on how it really kicks in. Oh yes, the mother lode. We color code these so we can see them in the winter.
Then it's time to make maple syrup.
Okay, let's go to the next round.
150 trees and over 360 taps run day and night.
We're busy.
Back at the sugar house, Clark's father Ron stokes the fire.
We do it the old-fashioned way, and it's kind of a family thing that we do. It has to be good and hot.
219 degrees to be exact.
219, it is still maple syrup. It doesn't become crystallized sugar. You push it past 219, it becomes crystallized.
This is a good hot one. This is coming up pretty nice. Ooh, yeah. 216 there. Ooh. It's taking the moisture out of the syrup. It's taking the sugar, separating the sugar from the water. It's just a pure maple syrup. We don't add anything to it. It's just natural.
Batch after batch, Ron tries to keep up with the trees.
We boil it right down to what you see is what you get.
In the end, 30 gallons of sap boils down to only 1 gallon of maple syrup.
And then we go and collect and do the whole thing again. So, and then of course he finishes off in the shack. Bucket by bucket. and handmade all the way until basically we bottle it. Well, it's all handmade, I guess. So, yeah, it'll work.
We enjoy the woods. We enjoy the outdoors. It's kind of something physical. And we do get some rewards out of the maple syrup.
In this family business, success has nothing to do with money.
We're going to have I think it keeps going the way it is, we'll have a record year.
Just dip your finger in there.
How is it?
So they collect every last drop, knowing soon it will all be over. The leaves will bud and sap will disappear. Then it will only be music. Until next year, when the gold starts flowing again.
Will recipes from old, no, they won't be sold.
Mix that up.
Up next, we'll add a little black pepper, some garlic, and a little sugar, and what do you get? A new recipe for game birds, tried and tested by Laura Shera and Chef Paul Lynch.
Closed captioning is brought to you by the Yard, premier manufacturers of maintenance-free outdoor patio furniture and accessories from recycled plastic.
Welcome back. It's time now to join Laura Shera and Chef Paul in the kitchen. I think they're concocting something that'll make all game birds taste just a little bit better.
Today we're getting wild in the kitchen with Chef Paul from Firelight Grill House and Cocktail Bar. And Chef Paul, I understand we're doing some French cooking today?
We're doing confit.
All right, let's get started.
Okay. We have black pepper, we have kosher salt. You're gonna put sugar in there.
Sugar?
This is a little bit of nutmeg, and we're gonna put the garlic in here. So now we have those in there, and you're gonna put a little bit of brandy. So then all we're gonna do is mix that up. And we have our wild game legs, whether it's duck, whether it's goose, whether it's pheasant. And what you wanna do is you wanna rub that in. Why don't you do this one?
Sure.
Okay? And make sure that all the skin is coated and the backside of it. We're gonna want to take this, put it down in a non-reactive pan, and we're gonna leave that set overnight. After our duck legs have sat in the refrigerator overnight, you'll notice that there's still a coating of the salt and the sugar and the spice on there, and then there's some liquid. So what we wanna do is we wanna rinse that off. Rinse it until you can feel no more grit. We're gonna pat them dry, and then in a non-reactive pan, I'm going to want to layer them as tightly as possible down inside the pan. I'm just gonna put the thyme sprigs in there and the bay leaf.
So now our next step is to cover it with duck fat?
That is correct, duck fat, goose fat, whatever fat you have. We're just gonna cover it, and we wanna put a little tiny hole in the center of it just to vent it. If you don't want it to steam, we want it to slowly cook. Perfect. So now we're gonna put that in the oven at 275.
Okay.
We're gonna just let it slowly do its magic. It's gonna take about 4 hours. Then after about 4 hours in the oven, once again, we're gonna pull it out and take a look at it. It's at a very low temperature, so it won't have any color on it, but you'll be able to see that the meat is very, very tender. The easiest way to serve duck confit is you make some kind of a side, whether it's wild rice or like we serve it at the restaurant, is in a cassoulet. And all you do is you get a good hot pan, and then we're just gonna take one of our legs out and we're gonna sear it in the pan. And all I wanna do is brown the skin, turn it over, and just warm it through. And then so this is the cassoulet that we serve in the restaurant. The duck leg with smoked pork belly and our Fire Lake rope sausage.
Thank you, Chef Paul. And I think the lesson here is whether it's duck confit, pheasant confit, or quail confit, it's easy to do and wildly delicious.
Still ahead, our Minnesota Bound Classic this week goes into the woods with two well-known TV celebrities, Lee and Tiffany. We'll stay tuned to find out what they're up to.
Minnesota Bound is brought to you by Jesse Treble Foundation Systems and Safe Basements Waterproofing. Grand Rapids Tourism, and by the Minnesota Agricultural Water Resources Coalition.
Coming up, our Minnesota Bound Classic is about two of the most popular hunting folks in the country. It's a couple, Lee and Tiffany, but they have a very interesting story to tell, and it begins in Minnesota.
A pretty morning.
On an April morning in southeast Iowa, a hunt for wild turkeys ends in a draw.
Oh, I was way low. I figured I was.
For Lee and Tiffany Lakowski, their hunting days have been beautiful of late for many reasons.
Well, every day my mother brings us a stack of pictures and DVDs and hats to sign, so.
Together, they have become the king and queen, the reigning celebrity couple in a crowded field of hunting shows on cable television networks.
Life is good, life is fine.
In a deer hunting show called The Crush, Lee and Tiffany are watched by upwards of 2 million viewers weekly on the Outdoor Channel.
We have no idea.
Yeah, I know. We say that all the time. It's like
We had no
sometimes
idea.
I gotta just pinch myself when you get up in the morning and just like, does that really happen? Because it's nothing that we even set out to do. It just kind of fell in our laps, really. I'd gone to college for 8 years. I was a chemical engineer. Tiffany was a flight attendant.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
So, how does an engineer and a flight attendant become America's favorite hunting couple?
Good. I think a lot of people are kind of drawn to us because they see us having so much fun most of the time.
The two also are famed for shooting big antlered deer. But now, the rest of the story.
Born and raised in Columbia Heights, Minnesota, so smack in the middle of the city or in the suburbs outside of Minneapolis.
And Lee?
About the identical to Tiffany. I was born in Minneapolis. We, lived my entire life in Columbia Heights, Minnesota. Went to Columbia Heights High School, same as Tiffany.
Call it a hunting story from Camelot. A pair of Minnesota city kids moved to Iowa to manage, plow, and plant thousands of farm acres to produce not corn, but giant whitetail bucks. And, oh yes, turn into television stars.
We want to be called the A-Team.
Okay, you're the A+ team. How's that? We're really doing the work. Every field that we have is planted by me. Every deer stand that's up has been planted, set up by Tiffany and I. That's probably the best part about it, is that we just get to spend so much time together.
So it's lucky we actually get along as well as we do, because we'd have some serious trouble if we didn't, because we literally are together pretty much 24/7, and actually, especially during turkey season and stuff, 9 times out of 10 it's just Lee and I out here.
It's funny because so many people ask us too, who shot the bigger one this year or whatever. And for Tiffany and I, there's really no competition between us. I always want her to shoot a big one. She always wants me to shoot a big one.
That's unbelievable.
That is awesome.
No, look at that. Look at the mass on. Looks like a short.
As it turns out, Lee and Tiffany every autumn each shoot whitetail bucks that most hunters in America only dream about.
Yeah, I figure we grew and raised all of them, so it doesn't really matter who shoots them.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a group effort.
That's funny.
Well, I enjoyed being with them, but no, I didn't get a wild turkey. But then Tiffany didn't either, so that makes us even, huh? Well, that about does it for us. Remember, introduce a kid to the great outdoors. I'm Ron Shera, and my dog, the star of the show, Raven, is taking a break.
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation. Call 1-800-899-7433. For more information on these stories and more, catch us on the web at mnbound.com.